Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. It's another brand new week of AI, and today is Monday, March 23rd, 2026. This is episode, I should always look at these before I start saying it, 686, I believe. Beth says, yes, I'm right on that one. Fantastic. It's already a good Monday. Speaking of, I'm here with Beth and Andy, and I'm Brian. Happy to already see everybody in the comments. Yes, Jeff, we get you. Mondays. Why is it always Mondays? Jude says the same. Yeah, we feel you guys in the comments, but we're here to bring the energy, bring the conversation, hopefully help you kick off your Monday. I'm on the East Coast like Beth, so like I'm already a solid 3 hours into my day. But folks on the West Coast like Andy are, I'm sure, just kind of get things kicked off. Although I'm sure with your household and property, all that, Andy, I doubt you're just starting the day when you get on this show. Something tells me you've already put in some work as well.
Not really. No, the show is my first priority.
Oh, there you go.
In the morning, because remember, it's only 7 a.m. here now, right?
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, there has been quite a bit of news, stuff that came out on Friday, stuff that came out over the weekend. And I was hoping you guys would be okay with kicking off talking about Elon Musk's latest talk about TerraFab. And the reason I would like to get into that first is because I did a little bit deeper dive because I was starting to get confused. We get so many news stories coming out about, chip manufacturing stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm losing track. Who's doing what? Who's using TSMC, the Taiwan major chip manufacturer? Who is partnering? Who is doing whatever? So good old Perplexity helped me out with that. But I thought maybe we could just start with that story because to me it's one of the bigger announcements. Now, Elon Musk has a long history of over-promising and under-delivering when it comes to due dates, when he says things are going to be done. I mean, hell, there was just news in the last couple of days about the Tesla, not the Cybertruck, the Tesla Semi, and how that was just starting to roll out and more people were being used. And I was like, I think that was from like 3-4 years ago when he first talked about the Tesla Semi. So he announced that he's launching TerraFab, the 25 billion Tesla SpaceX XAI chip factory that will rewire. This is from I can already tell this is from a Tesla site. So it's pro Tesla. But nonetheless, it's a joint venture, like I said, between the three companies, which are starting to become more and more vertically integrated. That's something we've heard Elon Musk talk about as far as the different companies and having them work together. This would, at full capacity, this is going to be built, by the way, in Austin, Texas. And at full capacity, this facility will scale to roughly 70% of the global output of the current world's largest semiconductor foundry from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which we usually just call TSMC. Elon said the stated goal is 1 terawatt of computing power annually, split between Tesla's AI5 inference chips, or A15, I'm not sure which one that is, for vehicles and Optimus robots, and D3 chips built specifically for SpaceX AI's orbital satellite constellation. Now, this is the second time I literally thought it was an error, but this is the second time in the same article that I've seen SpaceX AIs. Have they, I know there was mergers and stuff. Is that the new official name now? Is that correct? SpaceX AI?
Well, I think the SpaceX XAI.
Right. Yeah. I was like, is that official thing?
Oh, yeah, they're combined. SpaceX acquired XAI.
Okay, so either they're just...
We don't know if it's like the nickname or the actual name now.
Listen, this is from Tesla RATI. I don't know how you say that. That's where this happened to be coming from, where I happened to grab this news story. Okay, so that's the story from Tesla. Now, I don't doubt, what they built with the Gigafactory, when putting money towards something in focus, XAI, Tesla, all of them, Elon Musk has usually delivered on it, whether he meets the timelines he usually suggests. That's another story, but he usually does deliver on it. So let's just say that this does in fact happen. Okay, even if it's, a year or two down the road or whatever the case is, maybe more based on what he's looking to do. Well, this is where I started to get confused a little bit, because I was like, every major player talks about chip manufacturing, right? So I just wanted to know, okay, based on the companies that we talk about the most, who is doing what? Well, if this ends up becoming true, this TerraFab, let's just assume it does, this is full fab ownership. So this is actually replacing TSMC from that pattern, right? From that build. It's
And importantly, replacing externally designed chips, right? So some companies like Amazon,
right,
with their Trainium chips, and Google with their TPUs, they already design and build specific chips for their applications, their data centers. To date, anyway, XAI has not done that. SpaceX has not done that, but this includes full vertical integration. So they're going to design directly these chips for Optimus, the robots, and for Tesla vehicles, and for SpaceX
right,
applications. And there's an advantage to doing it that way. You can optimize and make more efficient if you have a very bespoke kind of application that you want to design and build your chip for. So they're not only replacing TSMC, they're replacing NVIDIA and the whole GPU plus,
right.
Beyond GPUs strategy that NVIDIA has with their own internal thing. And you can see how that might make sense for a company as large as SpaceX, XAI, and Tesla all together, right?
Yeah.
They have a huge demand for chips. So it makes sense for them to build that. But it's a big bet. And it's another arena in which, Elon Musk is now going to play. He's going to be manufacturing chips at the largest chip manufacturing facility to date.
And let's just talk about how hard that is, right? Let's just talk about Intel. Intel is a competitor of TSMC. We all know Intel. They had like a staggering something 9 billion lost last year. So much so that the government stepped in and, was somewhat backing and getting involved with that. Even by Perplexity's estimate, because of Intel's own perpetual stepping on their own foot, not being able to deliver, late to adoption of new technology and things like that, it's even suggesting Intel would have 2 to 3 years of a turnaround plan to be really viable as another competitor. Now, they do have chips. I should point out, they do have chips singularly that are competitive, if not better in some cases, some uses, than what TSMC is putting out, but they have reliability issues. They have some other things going on. That's a company that's been doing this forever and ever and ever. So I only point that out to say, number one, sure, I believe that Elon Musk can pull this off. He's proven over and over again to do amazingly hard things. His companies, right? Not just him, and the people who work for his companies. But this is also probably something that's not going to be stood up and delivered in a 12-month time frame, or even a 4-month, and maybe possibly below that, or beyond that. And then just to wrap this part of it up, because this is what I found interesting. Okay, Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic all have something to do with TSMC. And their manufacturers, right? To your point, Andy, about Google and what they have with their TPUs, or Amazon's Trainium or Gravitron, Meta, their MTIA, which I don't know, Microsoft, Maya and Cobalt, OpenAI and Anthropic both have big deals with Broadcom on code design. All still require TSMC for manufacturing, and Intel isn't used in any of those as far as I could tell. So that just tells you how far behind Intel is in getting back in the game with this, although it seems like they're on the right path now. We'll have to find out. So I just wanted to pull this up as like a starting place for today, just to say, like, it is a very big announcement. We'll have to see if it's possible or not. But this is a big disruptor as far as the AI community goes.
So there's a little bit of a left turn in this because of the Iran war. Qatar provides 30% of the helium used in processes, and chips need to be processed with helium because they have to be processed at very low temperatures. It's also used in MRI machines and various other things, and it's not possible to synthesize to make a synthetic version. We only have a limited amount of helium, which is why it's batshit crazy that we put it in children's balloons, because it's a problem when we run out. But 30% is no joke. It's tied to the Iran war, which may always be just about to end. But we're not the only people. The U.S. is not the only people who get to choose when it ends. So that, this was obviously in plan and play for them before this complication. But Qatar did shut down our sharply cut helium output, and that is because Iran's bombing can reach them. So for the U.S., the war is targeting countries and facilities within Iran's reach.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about the interplay of world politics and wars and stuff like that, and it's a good call out on it. It's an interesting.
Yeah, let me mention another aspect of the TerraFab development, and that is, there's a reasonable argument to be made that the most efficient place to put data centers is in space.
Yep.
Right. So we've heard about that. And now if you're thinking out 10 years, the biggest market for chips is going to be in space. And who in the world basically controls launch to space? That's SpaceX, right? So SpaceX is basically saying, we're not going to let NVIDIA and TSMC and all the other players in the chip world, populate those space-based data centers with chips. We're going to give priority to the launch of our own chips to put our own data centers up there. And that's anti-competitive to some degree. It's like, do we need to, if that's the actual strategy, do we need to break up SpaceX into multiple competitive launch systems that are privately owned, that are providing, the cost-effective delivery to space? That's just another angle that I think we ought to think about.
No, it is a good angle, and I don't know, just to wrap this up, I didn't see anything in this article about Elon Musk saying anything. Maybe I missed it, about other companies maybe using, in other words, them putting these new chips in the future out into the market for other companies. But if they did, other than just their own use case, is what I'm trying to say. But if they did, you could see how, Andy, that would also be problematic, which is, sure, we'll put your data center in space using our SpaceX rockets. It behoove you to use our Tesla, our TerraFab chips to build that process, and
or you can use another chip and we'll just charge you double.
Right.
So,
That's my point. Yeah.
So this is where I get a little confused, because technologies that were developed for space, like in coordination with NASA and government funding, were generally made available because they were made possible by government funding. Is it because SpaceX is a contractor versus getting a grant to do stuff? I know they get tons of money from the government. There's a paint that has little tiny minute ceramic balls in it, because you should paint it on your outside walls in your house if you're somewhere where you use air conditioning or heat, right? Because it doesn't leak. If the ceramic balls hold it maybe and reflect it back in, whatever. But those ceramic balls were developed for NASA, so that it helped shield the whatever it was, rocket,
Right,
going into space, propelled. Clearly not. I don't have all the words running this morning, but that technology was made available. It wasn't that that becomes proprietary and you can only get paint like that made from one place and it's super expensive like SpaceX makes it. I'm curious. Like, is there
Well, the example that shows you what is likely to happen is Oracle. So Oracle database was developed by DARPA, right? And Larry Ellison, who is now one of the richest people in the world and apparently now commands the entire media ecosystem of the United States, he and the media broadly, including news and entertainment, right? That all of that wealth was created from something that was a public good that was developed by our government with taxpayer money. So that's likely what's going to happen here. SpaceX isn't directly getting money just, into their coffers from the US government. The US government is paying SpaceX to take over delivery to space, right?
Okay.
So yeah, they're getting huge sums of money and they're making a profit at it, I'm sure as well. But that gives it a monopolistic advantage because it's serving one of the major countries with space delivery. Now, there will be competitive alternatives for people who want to put data centers into space. Europe has its own launch capability. China has its own launch capability. Russia has its own launch capability. Those are the major players in this area. But even smaller countries now are starting to deliver vehicles, I think, based largely on the idea that it can be done. And SpaceX has demonstrated that it can be done. So it's not clear that SpaceX will have monopolistic power on this, but it certainly has a big advantage.
Okay.
And that's a good pivot, not to take the next one, but since it's a weave and it's a pivot right off of the same story. One of the things that came out on Friday was Project Sunrise. Bezos-backed Blue Origin files for approval to put 51,600 data centers in space. So you're just talking about competitors. Blue Origin. Now, not another country competitor. That's another US competitor, but Blue Origin's been around for a while, and they also want to be in the data center in space. I still can't believe when I say that because it was a joke on the show so many months ago, but here we are. We're putting data centers in space and potentially on the moon, I suppose, and in other places. But yeah, not just a few. They talked to the FCC about 51,000 plus satellites in sun synchronous orbit. So how a data center and a satellite, how that all really works, I'm not really sure. I guess I haven't really thought hard about what a data center in space perhaps looks like, but maybe it is that they look like satellites and not like actual data centers. I'm not really sure. I haven't thought about it till right now. But this story came out on Friday as well.
They'll be meshed, right? So the stunning number 51,600 implies that they're going to be up there, all of them in sun synchronous orbit, meaning that they're arrayed in such a way that they're all in the same area relative to the sun on the Earth, which means they're kind of traveling around the Earth just like the sun does. Anyway, the point is that they're not going to be like all into one big mass that could be destroyed. They'll have interconnection, but they'll be close enough to each other in this kind of cloud. But that means that everybody's going to try to be putting their cloud of things also in the same area of space that is facing the sun 100% of the time,
right?
It was just all going to be kind of, you'll be able to see this enormous cloud of satellites that goes over, the Earth at the same time, right? And that has profound implications for seeing in space exploration using telescopes and all forms of telescopes too, UV, infrared, visual telescopes. There's a lot of disruptions that AI is creating, and this is not the least among them.
At the end of this article, and I didn't know this, but it says Sam Altman has decried space centers as basically ridiculous or AI snake oil. I didn't realize Sam Altman had, put any sort of statement out about what OpenAI feels about it. That'll change very, very quickly if there'll be yet again another code red if somebody does in fact put space centers in space, guys. Data centers in space. Okay. Yeah, shocking. Nobody saw this coming. Space centers in space. Okay, I've talked enough. Those are that just happened to be another news story talking about all of this. But let me kick it over to you guys. What did you have picked up over the weekend? It was a busy one in terms of news for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm going to weave off of yours to just uh, pay attention to the headline that SoftBank and a whole bunch of 12 Japanese companies, including Toshiba, Hitachi, and Mizuho Bank, plus Goldman Sachs, are investing in a huge data center in Ohio, the largest single infrastructure project in history, $500 billion data center. And it's going to, eventually produce in terawatt level outputs, I guess. But it's $1.5 trillion over 20 years to be invested there. And so what we're seeing is, just as we described, this global attempt to put a whole cloud of satellites sitting between the Earth and the sun at all times, or at least spread out. They can spread out quite widely, obviously. They don't have to be like right over the same area. They can spread out because they'll all be out far enough that they're always in the sun. So they can spread those out. But that's a kind of global scale enterprise that's happening around AI. And so is the development of ground-based data centers. So it's like a civilization scale effort that's underway here to add intelligence without us really having solved all the potential problems of having that scale of compute and intelligence operating without a full alignment. And so there's another news story, which is that the government, the US government, has just released their AI manifesto, the primary purpose of which is to prevent states from having their own regulation of AI. And so they're putting this forward, which is going to try to provide federal supremacy over any effort by any state to govern the development of AI.
Yeah, there's some nuances to that as I was digging in. Now, obviously, I have not read the whole policy rollout. I've read or listened to people talking about it, so I'm kind of going off that. And I read about it on Politico and stuff. There are some nuances there, Andy, as far as child laws to protect children that they, for one reason or one, want to keep at the like AI generated sexual abuse material or other child related AI laws. They want to keep them at the state level, and I'm sure there's reasons why that may be the case. I think what I kind of take away from this is I'm not saying, I fully check off on this policy because I haven't read it enough to really have that kind of detailed opinion. What I would say is, while there's on one hand the worry of taking away state laws on AI regulation, I also agree, at least personally, that AI and the future of what AI can do from the sense of like, at least the US government, and the potential impact on lives, I do see how it could be a problem if you were always having to wait on 50 states to have an opinion or approve certain things moving forward. So on one hand, I go, yeah, I definitely think there needs to be, these federal mandated pushes, man on the moon type movements that other countries have sort of, put their foot down and said, this is what we're doing. At the same time, not cutting states off at the knees and making them incapable or wiping out laws they put in place, especially for, states like California, who tend to be, on the edge or the front edge of trying to put these policies out and stuff like that. Obviously, there's a lot of people like fans of it.
Your point's well taken. There's a balance that has to be reached, but let's take clean air standards as an example. So the Trump administration has fought to reduce the ability of California to assert their own clean air standards. And you're right that California was in the lead for doing this important environmental protection thing, which had an impact on manufacture of cars because cars had to meet California standards in order to be able to sell into that market. So when California expressed a standard, then the manufacturing efficiencies required that they kind of design toward that. Whereas this approach, the Trumpian approach, is going to be no state can influence our standards at all. So they have, an administration, have reduced fuel emissions, fuel and emission standards for vehicles, and they're trying to prevent California from getting in the way of that. Similarly, in respect of this new AI policy, they want to prevent states from having undue influence over what they decide as the federal government, with a kind of an approach to a unitarian executive sort of autocratic approach. They want to be able to manage this without any influence or impedance from the states.
Right.
Right. Well, and we've seen this play out with things being released early for the US right now, where those laws are not the same thing, and not released right away in Canada, not released right away in Europe, while things spin up and see what they have to do to meet it. Canada is not as restrictive as Europe in that way, right? So I can see, like, that's the business argument. The business argument is that it will be prohibitively slow and expensive to try to release something that is not national but international, and need to make it work within the laws of all 50 states.
Hey, Carl, welcome.
I was gonna say Carl joined us as well. Hey, Carl, we were just talking about we talked about a couple of things, TerraFab, as well as data centers in space. Or as somebody was saying in the comments, I can't stop thinking about pigs in space. Yeah, if you're a Muppets fan from back in the day, that gets stuck around times, I wasn't going to say who said it because I can't remember, and I'm not going to say it was one particular person. But yeah, somebody was saying in the comments about pigs in space. It does make me laugh. And then we were just talking about the new AI policy out of the U.S. government, is what we were just talking about now. Okay, well, let's keep moving here because I'm sure there's a little more, Carl. I'm sure you may have a story or two. But Beth, let me throw it over to you because I know you haven't really had an opportunity to share at this point. What kind of caught your attention over the weekend?
So there are two cancer-related stories. The first is that there was a real heartwarming story about Rosie, a dog who had cancer, and her owner did a ton of things, chemo and surgery and doing all of the things. If you love a dog and you've had a dog with cancer, you know what the options are. And it was not improving her life. And so we started to talk to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT basically gave instructions for how to, let me see where the actual language is. Instructions for DNA sequencing.
Mm-hmm.
Identified the researcher at the University of North South Wales, I think UNSW, who was the right person to talk to put it in an mRNA vaccine, and it worked. Now, her cancer isn't cured, but it shrunk the tumor 75%, and she has a bunch of mobility back, right? What is amazing about this, and actually what Ali Miller talked about, was so the timeline. He adopts Rosie in 2019. Rosie's diagnosed with cancer in 2024. The owner, Paul, spends thousands on chemo, tries surgery, immunotherapy. Tumors aren't shrinking. Rosie is given 1 to 6 months to live. Paul talks to ChatGPT about possible cures. Paul and ChatGPT sequence Rosie's DNA for 3,000, like out of pocket. Apparently, you can do this. And uses ChatGPT and AlphaFold to try to find a cure. So now we've got AlphaFold UMX. That's a Google. Paul gets the scientist, UNSW scientist, on ChatGPT's recommendation to turn it into an mRNA vaccine. The UNSW gives the vaccine to Paul within 2 months. So that is like the story is miraculous up
Yeah.
to this point, and
Yeah.
then like wow,
Yes.
got approved, got tested, got within 2 months. Certainly less hurdles to jump when you are working with pets, so animal care as opposed to human, but still. And within 1 month of administering the vaccine, it starts working. So it's shrunk 75%. Rosie has regained her mobility, more time on Earth with owner. But the story in that is what's possible,
Yeah.
right? And the other piece of this, as a former dog owner, has spent tons of money on vet bills. Being able to like sequence the DNA for 3,000 and come up with something that is within the realm of what you're paying for cancer treatment anyway.
Yeah.
Right now, it sounds like this was then research. So this was not a private company generating this and having to pay for all of the research and the time and that to build a custom vaccine, but very exciting.
So I don't quite understand why it was required to know the DNA sequence of the dog in order to provide a cancer fighting vaccine. Like cancer vaccines trigger the immune system. They don't do CRISPR type modification of the DNA. So I don't understand that part of it, but I do want to say this is really exciting news. And regardless of how the whole thing progresses technically, because I just recently, like within the last week, I read briefly an article about a company that is about to deliver a vaccine for cancer that is showing great promise in their clinical trials, right? Early clinical, not human-based clinical trials yet, but yeah. So this is a real thing. You're going to be able to be vaccinated against cancer.
So, Andy, teeing me up for the second cancer story that I have, CRISPR engineers there's a previous technology, cancer fighting T cells, that is normally developed outside of the body. And it's called CART therapy, CAR-T. So it's already remarkable, produced complete remissions in blood cancers that had no other options, like big stuff, but it's very expensive. This experiment is that it could engineer cancer-fighting T cells directly inside living mice. So it's a one-shot future that happens within the body, doesn't need a lab, doesn't need all the expense of that. So directly inside living mice, it's publishing the results in Nature. So this was a Nature article. It is not in human cells yet. And the team added extra safety layers because editing cells in the body risks hitting off-target tissue, but it's still proof of concept in mice with significant hurdles before living trials, human trials. So the CART therapy already works. It just costs a fortune and takes months. If you can move it to a single injection, who does that change access for? And what does the regulatory pathway look like for something that edits cells directly in your body? Right? And it is this place of cancers that have no other choice where that edge research is happening.
Yeah. Listen, all of this is super, super, super cool. And it just brings me back to what I've said this many, many times in the show. My mom passed of cancer in 2008, but she had been in remission of cancer for 6 years prior to that. It originally started as breast cancer. Technically, they still say that's the ultimate cause, although it had spread and metastasized. But anyway, my point to it all is at some point I had a conversation with my mom and during those years, and while remission was actually going well, and she passed that 5-year mark, and she said, Brian, so much has changed in the way that we cure cancer just in these years. My hope is just to be able to make it long enough to see a cure for anything that I have. And of course, that wasn't the case for her. But I do feel probably more excited than ever with whether it's stories about what happened with the dog, which, we this starts with animals and it eventually makes its way to us, or the stuff with all the stuff with CRISPR. And, I think back to, Dennis Leary's comedy album from like the 90s called No Cure for Cancer. But like back then, the idea was you cure cancer, singular, like it cures all cancer. And of course, that's not the way this really works. Even today, everything is like cocktails and very specific, mixtures that work for some people and obviously not others. And I'm more excited than ever. I don't know if I could say, my lifetime, hopefully, but I definitely feel like in my daughter's lifetime that the vast majority of what we would call cancer today will be curable, or through CRISPR gene editing, or like vaccine, or whatever it is. I think there's going to be solutions there. These are like the best stories. I love hearing this. By the way, very popular in our chat. And people were asking, Beth, while you're going through that, if they could have the link, I think specifically to the first story about the dog and all that. There's a couple of people asking, but Cisco and Jude and everybody else, and Greg, all thanking you for bringing that story to the show. So that's very cool. It's always cool when everybody's excited to hear about a good saving a dog story,
Yeah, absolutely.
Carl, you've been, I know you jumped on a little bit later or whatever, but I want to make sure we get you in the mix. What's going on from your side of the world as far as AI? What have you been working on over the last couple of days?
There's a couple of things that really got me working a little bit more. Well, got me thinking. There was this video from Nate Jones talking about AI agents failing, and the more I've worked the last couple of weeks, it really was dawning on me, and I think he just put it in a much better term, where when we talk about job loss, I think that's the wrong question, or maybe that's not the topic we're looking for. Is, hey, what can AI actually do? Because I think like there's a lot of things like this company did this company did this, but it's like, okay, but what can AI do today? Like for company, like we did a presentation to a group of executives on Friday up in Edmonton. And consistently, the one thing that keeps coming up is, hey, that's fantastic. AI can do all this stuff. What can AI do for me specifically, my employees specifically, in our business specifically? Like getting to specifics, to right down to, hey, this is the operation. How can AI actually do this in this operation, right? Time and time again, the executives we talk to don't care about all the other stuff. They care about like, hey, what can it do for me? Like really, really deep down. So, but then Nate got talking to about how it, like we have these very powerful tools, but they're very brittle, and we're making them more powerful, yet they're still very brittle. Example would be, what I like is like when we talk about prompting, right? So for example, the thing is, hey, create for me a business strategy. If you put that as your prompt, you're not going to get what you want. But if you include all these things like your 5-year business plan, your last revenue spreadsheets, your GTM plans, like all the context you'd give it, right? Mission, vision, as much context as you possibly can put into it, you're going to probably get a better answer. And the way that you structure that prompt too. It's the same thing when you deploy your agents. If you tell it to do something, it'll do it. But if you give all this stuff to it, right, it'll do a better job at it. But the question is, who can provide that context, that person? And if you don't give it that context, and I've noticed this so many times when I'm running like multi-agent orchestrations for a client, like if you aren't specific enough, it kind of comes back a little janky sometimes. So that's the big piece right now is like, yeah, it's super powerful, but no matter what you do, someone still has to provide all the context. Now you take it a little bit further. There's another video he had. It's termed prompt engineering in how you talk to your AI. Two is context engineering, what information your AI should have. Then you have intent engineering, which is what your AI should want, which is your organization, mission, vision, values. Then he talks about specification engineering, which is putting the blueprint. So everything that you feed it is designed for it. That's a little bit further on. But it doesn't matter. I don't know if any of you have read the Ontology and Decision Traces by Jaya Gupta, but that's kind of where we're looking at today is like, you still need all this context. And agents cannot do anything without that. So the orchestration of all this is still human. It's all human centric. And then the review is still human centric. No matter what people say, it just kind of led to the point where like, yeah, and LeCun's right. Unless you have a world model that takes all this into consideration, memory, like all this stuff, you won't get a fully thing that can replace whatever the job is or whatever the task is. And I think that's the very key difference here: task versus job. A job has lots of tasks, but the task isn't just doing the thing. There's a lot of other stuff that's included in the job itself. So and that's where like when we talk to our clients, we tell them, hey, yeah, that's all fine and good that you hear all these job loss, but if you think about what your employees actually do, does it actually make sense? Like we haven't heard any people who we talk to that have specifically laid off people because of AI. None. They're like, why would we do that? That makes no sense. Because every single job function, there's a lot more than just doing the thing. And even doing the thing, you have to put so much context behind it. Because if you don't, that thing is going to it's not going to work properly. So that was just an interesting thing that is running through my head as we work through this last couple of weeks and months.
I think Beth, and you made a comment in Slack too, and it's I want to make sure you comment because in your response to the Nate Jones video that Carl shared. But I do think, Carl, you're right. The context is so valuable. We don't sit down with our jobs and think throughout the day and note when some abstract thought that's helpful comes into our brain that affects the way that we do our job. And a lot of times, Jen, I don't know if Jen's in the comments, but I used to say this to my old fire chief. He would get on a fire scene and we would call it intuition. I had a hunch, right, that we should place the engine here and spray the water here on the side of the building. But it's not, right? It's that particular fire chief had 30 years of experience at that point, maybe 25 years of experience. And all those cumulative fires that he had fought or been a part of or led his ability to have a hunch, right? It's not a hunch though. It's knowledge. It's all the data, all the stuff. And so when you try to take AI and put it in place of the fire chief, sure, the AI can read all the data, the wind speeds and all this stuff. Has been able to do that for some time. You can plop a computer down, but the question is, how do you get it to a point? How do you train the AI up to a point where it's able to have intuition or hunches in the same way that chief of 25 years have? I'm not saying this is insurmountable, but I agree with you that you're right. That's not here today. The other point I want to make really quick on the job though is, I work with salespeople all the time. I mean, you can't tell me that when we get to a certain point, and I think we're close with a lot of sales teams are going to be able to operate with less salespeople. It's just going to happen. You're not going to need as many salespeople to close as many deals, and then very quickly you're going to be able to close more deals straight through. Put it on the board for ROI, right through opportunities, right through close. I see it every single day. I'm not saying companies are doing it today, but when you're talking to companies and you're saying they're not replacing with AI, but look at if they have a sales team, if that's what they're doing, inbound, outbound, or whatever, look at something like marketing or sales. And what I would think is, okay, maybe you have fired anybody because of AI, but who are you not hiring because of AI? What new job isn't being created in sales, in marketing because of AI? And I bet you that's a different conversation.
But it depends on the industry.
It does. I agree. It's very niche. It depends on everything about the company. I agree. But don't, I mean, that's happening. I see it happening.
So here's the thing though. The industries we work with, maybe this is it.
Yeah.
Like imagine I can never ever let's just take home building. There is no way they're gonna because you have salespeople in the show home. There is no way they're going to replace any of their salespeople with an AI function because their entire model is built on like that direct community. Like I think when we talk to these companies, they would have to change how they sell, and all of them essentially sell very, very similar in one form or fashion. Is like they want the real life connection.
Yeah.
All straight, no problems. But in terms of how they do it, there's like area sales manager plus a area specialist. But the tasks that they do are minimal on the computer versus talking to a customer in the show home. And that is primarily their job.
Right. And that,
Yeah.
but that is, you just said it, it's specific to that industry. If the job can't be done by automation and reasoning on a computer, it's more safe. But to Brian's point, you may be able to do that with fewer people. Like if the person who did the talking in the house, right, in the show house, then sat at a computer for 5 hours and typed that up, or
Right.
those kinds of things.
That's my point. Yes.
It may be that those kinds of tasks aren't being done in that same kind of way, and you can do it with fewer people.
I would say very high, maybe, depending again on the company, the industry,
Yes.
and how the leadership goes. And that's what I mean. It's like the blanket statement of that doesn't make any sense to me because it depends on, like, there's another set of businesses that, like, if you are, let's say, oil and gas, and you do, I don't know, their sales is a little wonky. I don't even know how you would replace that specific type of selling to another business when a majority of that has always been like old boys school. You go golfing, you make the deal. You go this, you make the deal.
Yeah,
We're
but
talking
music deals. I don't want to speak for you, Beth, but what I hear you saying, what I'm saying for sure is I agree with you. If anything, AI is going to make it easier for more in-person sales, more handshakes and all that. I think the difference is it's going to take less in-person people to get the same amount of sales. So whether it's a person in a showroom or a person on a golf course or whatever, it will take less of those people to achieve the same outcome because of all the support systems that AI will produce, which is still a net loss of, let's say, one person playing golf. We no longer need 3 people to go play golf because 2 people playing golf are still able to shake enough hands, and all the stuff is done for them by AI in the back end. So they're able to just literally go play golf more often without any of the extra work that they have to do because AI is supporting that system.
Right, golf with the limitless pin and the
until I
Yes,
see
yeah,
it,
right, exactly.
until we see it in when we talk, that to me is more of a theoretical than an actual on ground. Like,
okay, but
right.
you've
And,
said
and that,
you've said your business, you may have expanded, but when we talked about your business earlier, you were like, the definition of the people that I work with is that one person can say yes, right? It's small enough that someone can say yes without having to go to a big thing that most corporations have to go through. And that is by definition a different kind of business, I think. It is the majority of businesses, right? Small businesses are the majority of businesses. Am I wrong?
small, medium,
Small
depending
medium.
on what your definition of a medium is too.
Right. Yeah.
Right. What I was saying when you posted it was the because we were talking about the fear of the AI job loss, and I feel like that is also informed by how hard it is to get a job, right? Over the last couple of years, jobs have been harder to get. People are doing way more rounds of interviews than they were doing before. If you're just coming out with education and not experience, very hard, right? So the entry level job has dried up in some ways. I think, Carl, to your point, that's probably not true for apprentices coming into a home builder business or those kinds of physical businesses where you need people to come in because it's hard on bodies. But there is the fear is being informed by multiple things, I think.
So, okay, yes, again, but it's industry dependent because we're working with a major global dev company, and they're like, we can't get enough people, white collar too, with this specific talent. Like it's so.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's more the comments are around like tech. Maybe it's more around tech, and maybe it's just because, just like many of our construction clients, we don't give a crap because as long as you need roads and sewers, we are always hiring. So anybody who is a white collar, we would love you to come over, and
Right.
they'll pitch is like within 3 years you'll be making 120, 150, but you better be ready to do physical work. Like that's
Right.
that's the big thing for them, right? Because they're always needing. So it's to me it's just I look at that, his post plus our on ground, it's not coming as clear as what the news says it is, or theoretical. That's my only point.
So I know we've talked before about businesses that are ripe for disruption. Are you feeling like those businesses aren't ripe for disruption in that same kind of way? If someone found a new way to do it, are the like AI agent native home building? You heard it here first.
I think it's
No.
more like that's hard one because of capitalization, right? Because you need capitalization for like massive land and all the hard costs to actually build like physical stuff.
Right.
Like that's very difficult. Not saying it can't be done. It just, you would have to think about how all the elements of that, and this stuff gets bought like years, if not decades in advance, and would sit there. And maybe you have that. It's just, anyway, just that was kind of my point, is just like more granularly, I was just looking at like, hey, what are the capabilities today? But if you look at like from an agent perspective, you still have to have people that run that. Like that thing cannot replace anybody. Like for what people are doing, it was like it'd be ignorant of a business owner to try to do that, because it's like, wait a minute, I can't actually do this. And maybe it's the skill set that changes now. Instead of you doing it, you orchestrate it, and then the people who used to do it, you can deploy them somewhere else. For us, like the comments that we usually make is like, hey, if you have $100,000 that you'd hire for another employee, you can distribute that to 25 employees, $3,000-$4,000 per, regular training, access to highest tools. You could probably increase the productivity and do even more stuff with that. And you're right, you may not need to hire more. You, like, one company's like, we love our people. Can we do more with not that many? Because we're still in growth phase, but it doesn't make any sense for us to hire an extra 50 when,
which is still the same net. Look, I mean, sales, incredibly, at least SaaS, right? Business to business SaaS, incredibly high churn, because it kind of chews you up and spits you out. And there's a lot of not so great sales departments out there. I've worked with great ones, and I've worked with not so great ones with bad leadership and things like that. And the reality is it's a hard job, right? Especially if commission is based, whatever. So there's churn. And so what I think you would see though, and it might get obscured a bit in the numbers when you try to look truly at where there's disruption. You're right. These are roles that are a bit different than the ones you're talking about, building roads and things like that. But over time, I think what you see is there's natural churn, which the numbers would just show you, but what you may not see as much, or you may see a slowdown over time. I can't imagine you wouldn't, is how often those roles are being replaced. So the net number over time without firing anybody. So there's no data on firing whatsoever. Nothing to point at and say AI did that. But if you were to watch over a 2-year period of a sales team, as we're in this sort of tumultuous state right now of AI and what it can do and subagents and the things, I would imagine a team of 20 becomes a team of 19, becomes a team of 16, becomes a team, and people just churn. And the company says, I don't know if we need to replace that position anymore because now one person can do two. And honestly, I'll put myself in this same role. Not to say that, the scale is moving away from me, but I now do what was impossible for me to do as a single person just a year ago. I think a lot of us feel that way. So I'm able to do work that's technically taking the job of somebody else because we would have had to hire somebody else to do the extra work we have coming in at scales because we're growing. But guess what? I can still handle it. So I'm putting out multiple reports and multiple clients. We couldn't have possibly pulled that off a year ago. So somebody didn't get a job because of what I'm capable of doing with AI, right?
But it's also making the assumption that like everything will stay static, right? And I think
I agree. There's a lot of ifs in this. Yes.
because and from a static perspective too, there is I think we're not talking about like, hey, what are the potential new roles that are going to spin out because of this? What are the things that you do now, or roles that haven't existed but now have to exist because of whatever, right? And I think that's kind of also missing in the conversation, because I could also think too, one of the things that I was thinking about was like, okay, let's say one person in the company deploys whatever 4 agents, another person deploys another 4, right? There is no layer right now that's like, hey, wait a minute, this path of these 2 agents is not congruent because one is taking a document, the other one is looking for the same document and doing something, right? Like the orchestration layer isn't right now. It's like, hey, your personal agent does a whole bunch, but then there isn't anything to oversee that. And then from a cybersecurity, we were talking about this too. Yeah, there isn't actually another job where it's like, hey, you manage a set of agents that actually go out and intercept personal agents that are doing things that aren't supposed to do.
Right.
But there's a whole, I was like, oh, that's a completely different role. That's an interesting thing that you could spin out too. So, but anyway, I was like, I think the crux of what I was saying is less about it was less about the job, but more about like the actual ability of an AI to do the work,
Right.
which most companies haven't adopted or understand, and B, it's still very brittle. And like Nate said, it is brittle. Like if you don't do it correctly, it won't produce the output that a lot of people expect to. And then they'll be like, that doesn't work.
And that is that. So I think there are a couple places where this, a couple places where that kind of perspective isn't taking into account the other things that can affect it necessarily, because there is an assumption that the standard of what a human can do will stick, right? People will be dissatisfied because it's being done not as well as a human could do it. Well, we're seeing AI slop still get views, right? AI writing of research papers are still being added in. Sometimes it is as good or better than a human could do. But as we're moving into the transition, we need to also not assume that good enough doesn't lower the bar where an AI can do it. And code is a perfect example. If you talk to real coders, AI writes messy code. It's gross. Nobody wants to read it. Well, right. Does it work? Right? And that so far for many organizations has been okay. Gross working code is not a deal breaker. We're not paying hand coding anymore, or to that level, I guess. Yeah. And the other thing that I think is potentially impacting this is the global economy, like where we're going in terms of what happens as a result of the Iran war, in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, is that how you say it? And those kinds of things that are still in the immediate trying to figure out. But if it lasts longer, we're going to see a bunch of other factors impacting these situations.
Yeah. And I think, maybe this is a great place to wrap up it. And except, Andy, I know you've been sort of quiet. I don't know if you want to jump in, if you want any last words on this, please go for it. And then
I'll close by saying that I want to highlight one of the things that Carl said in introducing this topic long ago, and that is that there's an ongoing need for human context engineering. So you have to provide the AI agents with the correct context in order for them to do the best job possible. And so for those of you who are doing this on a regular basis, now Claude Cowork has added a way to simplify the process of assembling the context necessary for a new project. And that is, they added projects to the Claude Cowork interface. And we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
because I have a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
Well,
I've been using projects with Cowork in the file structure, but now it seems like that'll be a lot easier in the desktop interface with Cowork.
That's a needed added. And I mean, also, could I just throw out there, because I know they listen, come on, Google and Gemini team, build I know you did an AI studio, but I want a Claude code inside the Google workspace with shared files that are in a system so that I can build projects for the team, but it's not isolated on my computer, but in shared project folders, just like we already have with Google. So can we get to this? Come on, can we just build this and bring it out? Because I would like to use this today for my work.
Yeah. So that's what it's all about is, humans are working with AI, and AI is a force multiplier for the humans who figure out how to use it. And the tool set is getting better and better for you to deliver the co-intelligence you need to deliver to your agents in order to make them really, really effective. And this is an example of that, the projects edition in Cowork.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. All right. Scott's mentioning it. Brian said, wrap it up. Carl's like, I'm out of here. Carl did say in our Untitled Chapter today, the meeting at the top of the hour. So yes, but good call out, Scott. I am going to wrap it up though, because we're that time. So thanks for hanging out with us on a Monday. Hopefully you found this to be a good conversation on a Monday and get you going, get you out of the Mondays. As they were saying at the top of the hour. Appreciate y'all being here. Thanks for everybody watching. Thanks to everybody who's going to be watching or listening to this on replays later on in the day or week. We see the numbers. We're growing all the time. We appreciate all of y'all. Hey, look, a like or a subscribe, yeah, they make a difference. So whatever platform you're on, we appreciate you if you take the extra 3 seconds to do that. I know everybody says it, but the reality is it makes a difference on the algorithms and all the stuff. So if you like what we're doing, that is the easiest way to let other people know that you like what we're doing, and so they can come find us. So we appreciate all that. If you're willing to do it. And hey, we're going to be back the rest of this week with brand new shows Tuesday through Friday. So come back and hang out with us. Until then, we'll see you guys. Have a great day. Bye.